Good morning. Called to Evangelize is the subject of the lesson today. Called to Evangelize, February 7, 2021. Where lesson scripture is in John chapter 1 verses 37 through 51 and chapter 4 verse 25 through 42. Our focus scripture is in chapter 4 verses 25 through 42. Called to Evangelize. The key verse reads, many Samaritans from that city believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I have ever done. John chapter 4 verse 39. Called to evangelize. The story that we're talking about today is Jesus' encounter with the woman at the well. Jesus and his disciples, they were traveling and they went through Samaria. And when they got through Samaria, which was a place that the Jews didn't normally go, they would avoid it. If you're in traffic, even though it may be quicker to go through the city, some people like to just bypass the city. They would usually bypass Samaria when traveling in that direction. But Jesus went through Samaria to get to Galilee. And he stopped, and the disciples went out to get him food. And while he was at the well, a woman came up, a Samaritan woman came, and Jesus asked her for water. Now, it wasn't customary for the Jews to even socialize with the Samaritans, but it wasn't even customary for a man to be talking to a woman in public. So Jesus, by him asking her to give him a drink of water, that was breaking a couple of norms. Jesus was the norm breaker. By now we should know that he was the norm breaker. But he didn't break norms just to be breaking them. He broke them to fulfill God's plan. He broke them to bring a newness into our lives. He broke them to show that worship that is not in places, it is in our hearts. He broke them to get us out of these traditional things and let the church be in us and let God be in us. So all that to say, Jesus was at the well and he asked this woman for water, and she said, "Why do you speak to me? Why are you asking me for water?" What's going on in her head. So Jesus and the woman, they began to have conversation. And through this time, this woman begins to speak about the Messiah. And Jesus reveals to her, after some questionings, he had told her some things. And he said to her, "Go tell your husband." Now this woman, her background that Jesus chose to use in this situation wasn't one that would normally be used. But what did I say earlier? Jesus came to break the norms. And I've said in previous lessons, God uses who he wants to use. So he asked this woman, he tells this woman about her. So he said, "Go tell your husband." And she said, "I don't have a husband." And Jesus said, "No, you don't have a husband. You've had 5 husbands. You answered correct." So in that it was almost like Jesus was testing her just a little bit to see what she was going to say. Because he said, "You answered correct." He wanted to see what she was going to say. She wasn't ashamed of that fact. She wasn't ashamed of the fact that she had had 5 husbands. And Jesus didn't want her to be ashamed of that. He chose to use her, and he revealed to her that the one that she spoke of, the Messiah that she spoke of, was actually him. Jesus revealed that he was the Messiah to a woman that had had 5 husbands. A woman that other people would have written off. A woman that people would not have chose to listen to. But Jesus chose her to go out and evangelize and say and tell and spread the word that he was the Messiah. He used this woman. And after their conversation, during that conversation, the disciples came and they noticed that Jesus was talking to this woman. Now the disciples, they didn't even question Jesus, but they questioned in their mind, why is he talking to this woman? But they didn't go. They didn't say anything. And they came and they were ready to give Jesus food, and he said, I'm not hungry. The food, the food that he wanted, the food that would quench his appetite, was not of man. It was of fulfilling God's plan. Now Jesus laid out. Now later in the chapter, it speaks that the woman, she went out and she spreaded the word that Jesus was indeed the Messiah. He was the Christ, for he had told her about her life by just meeting her just that one time, and he knew all about her. So knowing this woman, she went out and she evangelized, and she spoke of that word. She spoke of Jesus. She spoke of what had been done in her presence. She spoke of that. And the key verse says, many Samaritans from that city believed in him because of the woman's testimony. In verse 39. Many more will believe his word too. So he chose this woman. If you know, there's a trend right now. Last week we talked about the prophesying daughter. This week we're talking about a woman called to be evangelized, to be an evangelist, called to evangelize. We're in a conversation right now. We're in this series right now where we're going to be talking about the raising up of women, spotlighting women. This woman was called Evangelize. Now bring that fast forward to today. We, not only women, mainly women, a woman that has been through a lot can go through the exact same things as a man goes through, but she's looked on differently by society. When you see a single woman, you automatically assume that she's been sleeping around with men. Not single. When you see a single mother, most of society automatically assumes, and not all, but most of society would automatically assume that she's been sleeping around, she's got these kids out of wedlock, or they assume the worst of the situation when they see a single mom. But how do you know her husband hadn't passed away? You don't know the circumstances, yet you hold the woman to a different set of rules, a different set of interpretation. But you see, when sometimes you see a single man, you say, oh, look at him. You see a single father, look at that dad stepping up to the plate, spending time with his kids. You don't know what's going on. But we hold women to a different standard than we do men. The exact same situation. We judge them differently as society. We even judge them differently in the church. Women trying to lead congregations. Like I said, women trying to lead a congregation, they receive slack not only from men, but from women too. As much as women try to empower themselves, you have some women that want to be empowered, but they want to be led not by a woman. If a woman is in a leadership role, they reject that. Why? Why is that? There were many women that were spoke about in the Bible that did great things in the Bible. Remember that the woman is our helpmate. She is not our slave. She is our helpmate. God saw that man was lonely, so he created woman to help him. There are so many people out there that thinks the woman role is to just stay at home and cook and do this for a man and submit to a man. Yes, women are to submit to their husbands. But you submit to your husband. I'm going into some different parts of the Bible now to talk about the man's role too. Women submit to us when we do our part. When you love and you protect your woman, she submits to you then. See, people just take that little snippet of the Bible, but what it says is women are to submit. I'll paraphrase, but you'll get the message. Women are to submit to their husbands as we are to submit to the church, as we are to submit to Christ. And we submit ourselves to Christ because Christ first loved us. So men, if you show your women and you love your woman as Christ loves the church, she'll submit to you. But that submission is not for you to just hold things over her head. It's not for you to boss her around. What would we do without a strong woman? Even James Brown said it's a man's world. But it wouldn't be nothing without a good woman. Even in the secular music, it's said there. Women are called just like men are called. You don't know who God is calling. You need to focus on the calling on your life. Whether you're a man or a woman, you focus on what God has for you. You spend time praying, fasting, studying your word so that your ears will be open. See, too many times when we see a woman in a leadership role, when you see a woman in the pulpit, you see that only in sight. What is sight? Sight is fleshly. Sight is fleshly. But God's vision is spiritual. God's vision is spiritual. Stop looking in sight and try to see it through God's vision. Stop putting women in a box. Stop being so judgmental of them because of your sight. Sight is fleshly. Vision is spiritual. If we can focus on what God has for our lives and we put it all together, oh, won't it be a happy day? Oh, won't God truly smile at the works of his children? But too often, it's God's children who are tearing his plan apart. We are allowing the enemy to get into us and tear his plan apart. Just because our sight, the sight of a woman leading, the sight of a woman in a role that you think was designed for a man. That's sight, that's not vision. See, Jesus had God's vision when he went and he spoke to that woman and he revealed to her that he was indeed the Messiah. That was God's vision. Now the disciples, when they walked up, they had some sight in them. But their sight did not become judgmental because they knew the works of Jesus. They knew who he was. They understood that, and they understood if he was doing this, he was doing it for a reason. Understand what God has for you. Focus on God. Focus on him. Represent him well. Get an intimate relationship with him. And you will be able to see things through God's vision and not sight. You will be able to see the vision that God has for your life. Man, woman, boy, or girl. The relationship is so important. Spending time with God is so important. Do that. See what it is God has for you. And stop worrying about who God is putting in other positions. Because just as well as he put them in a position, he can put you in a position if it is his will. Have a blessed day, my brothers and sisters. God bless you. Amen.